Hello and welcome everyone to Negotiation Strategies online course. This is a pre-enrollment or information session. My name is Rudy Falad. I'll be your moderator today. And with me, we have a Professor Michael Morris. He will talk to you more about the course in a second. So once again, if you join a pre-enrollment or information session about negotiation strategies from Columbia Business School, you're in the right place. But before we go any further, we'd like to know a little bit more about you. Just if you could put in a chat where you're connecting from, that would be great. Just wait for a couple of moments to see where are you all based today. So I see India is one. Okay. Okay. Anybody from New York? I'm sure there will be some. All right, there's Dallas, Texas in the house, and yes, there is New York in the house. So great stuff. So US, different places, and also from abroad, okay? So what we'll do in this session, it's meant to be interactive as well, right? So we are recording this. In case you register for this session, you will get the recording, but also on Emeritus channel on YouTube afterwards. But in any case, for you that were able to join, you can put your questions using a Q&A button, right? So Q&A button is the best. You can put any questions there. As we go along, we will have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So once again, let's welcome Michael for now. Just a quick hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Morris. I'm the faculty leader for the course. I'm based at Columbia University in New York and looking forward to meeting some of you.
Brilliant. So we will hear from Michael in a second. He will talk about curriculum and he will give you a little bit more color about the program. So, but in terms of structure, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about Columbia Business School, Columbia University, why this is the right place to be to take a course like this. What is this course about? For whom this is intended? And then, of course, we can go through the logistics as well. What will wait for you at the end, which is the digital certificate. We can talk about any other questions you might have. So once again, a little bit of an introduction about Columbia, then why this particular program would stand out, especially because it comes from Columbia and from Michael. And then we'll talk about his background and the curriculum. So Michael will tell us more about the curriculum. So in case you didn't know, Columbia Business School was founded in 1916. It's part of Columbia University, obviously. You see part of the picture here is a very, very modern building. So this is not from the 1916 or anything like that, right? It was just opened a couple of years ago in Manhattanville. And the one difference between this school and any other Ivy League school that is proximity to business. Because it's the only school that is based in New York City, close to all the businesses and banks of this great city. So, as I said, it's part of Columbia University. You can see here unbelievable depth and breadth of alumni success, right? Whether it's 4 U.S. presidents, more than 100 Nobel Prize winners, founding fathers, it's close to 500,000 alumni in general, 86 alumni clubs, support Supreme Court justices and Academy Award winners as well. But we'll focus on the business just in a second. So what's important about Columbia Business School? I said proximity to business, which means what? This is practical program. This is a practical program. This is hands-on program. But it's not just anecdotes. This is backed by research. So this is research-backed action learning. This is what we mean by this, right? So it's practical, it's hands-on, but you don't get just anecdotes, but it's backed by research. So anything you will hear in the class has been researched thoroughly, so you can rely on it. Now, why we talk about negotiation strategies? A lot of people say, well, you negotiate all day long, right? From the morning until the evening, at home, at work, it's essential skill to have. However, when you see here, only a fraction of corporations utilize negotiation training protocols, and only 1% have a world-class negotiation program. So clearly there is need for training. We can all do better in negotiations if we obviously have been trained. So this is one way to do it because there is no shortage of need for this, right? Whether you negotiate with your kids, your spouse, or at work, which is going to be the focus here.
Let me chime
Yes,
in.
go ahead.
Let me chime in with a few more ideas and statistics here. Um, One recent study found that middle managers spend more than 30% of their time resolving disagreements and coming to understandings, negotiating whether to a formal contract or an informal arrangement about how a project is going to be organized. So it used to be a niche skill set that people felt they needed to have if they were going into real estate development or if they were going into labor relations. But now I think every manager does a lot of negotiating, does a lot of challenging negotiating because you're negotiating with people from different industries and different cultures. And so there's much more need. A lot of people come to our in person program. They come to New York for a week and they go through a very intensive, from the morning to the night, uh, experiential learning routine. But the problem is that a lot of the most busy managers in the world can't, take a week off to come to New York. And so this course has been designed with those people in mind. The many people who could benefit from an experiential negotiation program, but they need it to be on their schedule. And they need it to be something they can do from their office. And so we've brought together some particular expertise of CBS in building AI-based tools that enable this, combined with the expertise that Emeritus has in distance learning and in meeting the needs that busy executives have.
Exactly. Brilliant. So let's talk about program highlights. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about the structure of the program, how it all works.
Sure. Well, let me start with this idea of comprehensive learning. Um, we believe that learning negotiation is both a science and an art. It involves learning conceptual frameworks that help you analyze a conflict and determine which strategies apply. But it also involves behavioral skills, things you need to do at the bargaining table, things you need to be able to do quickly and adeptly before the table to prepare. So we look to a model that's called deliberate practice. It's the model of skill acquisition that most professional athletes these days use, and it's also used by most countries to train their special forces soldiers. And the idea is, if you're going to try to improve somebody's performance at a challenging skill, you need to give them repeated opportunities for practice. Athletes call it reps. They need many reps. They need feedback about their performance on the reps. They need to be taught strategies that they can try to put into place. And then they need opportunities to reflect on it, usually with other athletes, reflecting on, how did it go today? What did you do well that I didn't manage, etc. It's more or less what you would do if you were going to learn a martial art. I sometimes tell students that if negotiation is an art, it's more like a martial art, like kung fu, than an art like painting. It's not something where you have to be born with God-given talent. You just have to practice, practice, practice with the right teaching, with the right guidance, and with the right conditions for learning from experience. Because learning from experience doesn't happen automatically. It requires that you're getting feedback. It requires that you're getting frameworks and that you have worthy opponents to practice with. So that's the model of what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to create a sort of dojo for negotiation learning to bring all of you up to a higher level of performance. Now, some of the ways that we do that in an online program that haven't been done before are we use AI-based agents. They play two roles in the course. One role that they play is as sort of bargaining bots that serve as a counterpart for you to engage in a negotiation and practice a negotiation. And you might think, oh, well, it's not so hard to win a negotiation against a bot. Well, let me tell you, these bots are very good negotiators. and they always show up prepared. And if something goes wrong and you want to start over again, you just push a button and you can do a do-over. And none of those things is true when you're learning by negotiating with other humans. They don't always show up prepared, and you can't have a do-over. You can't do it iteratively to improve your skills. Now, the other use of AI that we do, and this I think is unique in the world, it's just something that's been developed in the research that I do with the computer science department over the last year or so, is that we have AI negotiation coaches. So after you negotiate against a bot, it produces a transcript, and then immediately another agent analyzes the transcript for tactical successes, tactical missed opportunities, for areas where your language could be, more, cooperation inducing or more assertive, or whatever the issue is. And so you get really nuanced, really tailored feedback from these AI coaches, and it's really quite miraculously how well it works. Now, we don't exclusively rely on the AI. We also have a couple of live sessions where you come together like in a traditional negotiation class with your classmates, and you're assigned to a counterpart, and you are put into a Zoom breakout room, and you have half an hour to negotiate the best terms you can get. And then there's a group debrief where we talk about the different outcomes reached, the different strategies that led to those outcomes, and we induce some recommendations about best practices in this particular type of conflict. We also use case studies. We have a variety of types of case studies. Some of them are traditional written case studies. Some of them are case studies where we have short videos, often where I've interviewed the CEO. And I can, for example, I use in the class a short video where I interview Ratan Tata, who is the head of the Tata Group in India, one of the largest companies in the world. I also have a case where we interview Sidney Torrell, who used to be the CEO of Lilly, talking about acquisitions in the pharma space. Now, in addition to case studies, we also have a kind of number of kinds of peer learning. So you'll go through reflection exercises where your reflections on the week will get posted to a bulletin board, and then your classmates will comment on your reflections, and it will be a sort of group brainstorming about the topic. You'll be working with your fellow travelers on the learning journey, building a more and more complex understanding of the negotiation in the different kinds of conflicts that managers encounter.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about who do we think this program is suited for most. First, mid-career professionals who would like to know more about negotiation. They would like to be more effective when negotiating, but also senior leaders who would like to improve and they lead complex negotiations. As Michael already mentioned, that there are some very unique ways how to learn, leveraging the technology that maybe we didn't have 20 years ago. And that could help you to be more efficient and learn faster and better when you want to lead complex negotiations. And also we mentioned international ones as well, right? So that's what we think would be our target group. And now let's hear more about Michael's background and then the curriculum as well. Over to you.
Thanks, Rudy. Yeah, my background originally is training as a behavioral scientist at Columbia. We're a research university. So in addition to running a business school that is very, very close to business, we also do basic research. Some of the research on AI that I mentioned is a part of what I do, but my background is in behavioral science, research psychology. I taught at Stanford Business School for the first 10 years of my career. I got tenure and promoted to full professor there. And then I moved to Columbia Business School about 20 years ago. I'm originally from New York, so I moved back home. I'm one of the main teachers of negotiations. I teach the MBA classes, I teach the executive MBA classes, and I teach the in-person executive ed classes. I developed this class over the last year, working closely with Emeritus. Much of my work is about international cultural differences and how they affect negotiation. You know, people everywhere in the world have to solve the same problems in negotiation, but they have slightly different scripts for going about the process. And we learn those by looking at international cases, and they're valuable to know so that you don't send signals that you're not intending to send. I also teach courses on leadership and have developed a lot of the leadership training that has changed Columbia Business School from being primarily a Wall Street feeder in the past to now being a school that trains general managers and trains people for the tech industry. I've published a lot of articles. I advise a lot of other universities. I also have run the internal leadership and negotiation programs for a number of top companies over the years. I've done that for Bloomberg in New York. I've done it for Goldman Sachs. I've done it for Cisco when I was out in California. So I have a pretty close understanding of the needs of corporations and what they want their middle managers to learn from high-level executive education.
All right, so we're going to talk about the curriculum now.
Mm-hmm. One thing I might add just before we go into these the details of the modules is that one of the pleasures of this course, you know, we ran the course for the first time in the fall, and even though we were doing a lot of things for the first time, we got very high ratings, you know, like 4.6 out of 5, which is very unusual for a first run. And one of the reasons for that is that in addition to me, you know, you'll see me 2 or 3 times during the 6 weeks, but then every week, in many ways, you'll have contact with our course leader, Gus Calvacanti, and he is really extraordinary for the role. He's a Harvard-trained lawyer and someone who works on mergers and acquisitions. So he brings a very substantive area of expertise into the teaching team that complements mine. And he's from Brazil. He's worked in a number of different countries, based in New York now. So he brings a lot of insight about the international dimensions of things. And he does a great job, I think, of creating a through line through the course, you know, building on the student insights, paraphrasing the things from my lectures so that it all comes together for the students. But now what I want to do is give you an overview of the progression of topics in the course, and along the way, give you a sense of the philosophy of the course, the pedagogy of the class. We believe that it's best to start with the simplest cases of negotiation and then slowly build towards the most complex cases. So the simplest cases are buyer meet seller scenarios where it's haggling over the price of a single item. And that may be a piece of equipment. It may be a factory that's being sold. It may be some real estate being purchased. But then often there are multiple issues being negotiated. So that's some complexity. And then sometimes it's not simply a deal that is being resolved, but a dispute. The two parties are stuck together because of some past costs, and that creates more complexity when you have a dispute as well as a deal. And then you get various kinds of social complexity. You have mediators and arbitrators and judges that are sometimes involved in resolving a conflict. You have agents who are at the table instead of the principals. You sometimes have more than two sides. You have four parties involved in a cross-functional conflict within an organization, and you need to find consensus, or sometimes you need to get 3 of 4 parties to agree, and coalitional tactics become a big part of things. And then finally, the most complex negotiations are large-scale public negotiations, such as like when Columbia wanted to build our new building. You know, we had to negotiate with the mayor's office. We had to negotiate with the governor. We had environmental groups. We had the Hudson River, you know, environmental protection groups. We had unions. We had the Harlem Neighborhood Preservation Group. So all of those stakeholders had to be in a conversation, sometimes coming together for public meetings in order for Columbia to get the license to tear down a bunch of buildings and build this new campus. And so that's probably the most complex form of negotiation, and that's what we end in. And in that kind of negotiation, political factors become a bigger part of things. There are often voting rules, and there are strategies that have to do with the particular voting rules, whether it's majority rule or consensus or something similar to it. So that's the progression. Now, in a little bit more detail, negotiation training generally consists of three basic schools of thought. And we can call those three schools of thought the competitive worldview, the cooperative worldview, and the process-oriented worldview. And you've probably seen books in airport bookstores that are manifestos for each of those views. The competitive view is there are books like Winning Through Intimidation or The Upper Hand, and it's great for salesmen if you're in a one-off situation, but it's not necessarily great for everyone else. And then there are very cooperatively minded books like Getting to Yes that suggest every negotiation comes to a win-win outcome. And then there are very process-oriented books like Difficult Conversations or Crucial Conversations that argue, the most important thing is managing people's sense of fairness and building commitment, and is not nearly as the process is more important than the outcome. And our view at Columbia is that, if you're a salesperson, it may be enough to know the competitive style. If you're an HR executive, it may be enough to know the process-oriented style. But when you become an executive and you're responsible for a whole business unit or a division, you really need to be doing all three of these things simultaneously. You need to be claiming a lot of value for your division and for yourself. At the same time, you want to make the deal as yesable as possible for the other side or the other sides. You don't want to leave any money on the table. You want to become good at creating value. And you want to manage the process in a way that leaves no hard feelings or reservations. You don't want someone to renege on the deal. You don't want someone to be slow in their implementation. You don't want someone to feel sour in their relationship to you or to damage your reputation. So we focus on building a set of tools that allow you to do all three of those things at once: the competitive goal, the collaborative cooperative goal, and the process-oriented goal. Now, with regard to the 6 modules, the first module focuses on the competitive goal. That's sort of the oldest way of thinking about negotiation. It's something that's very salient when you're dealing with a single issue price negotiation, like haggling over a piece of real estate. There's a set of ideas called positional bargaining. Different tactics apply depending on the structure of the bargaining zone. And so we expose you to cases with different kinds of bargaining zones, narrow, negative, or wide, and we give you clues about how to diagnose that. We talk about the emotional side of negotiation, not having deal fever that would cause you to strike a deal when it's more in your interest to walk away from a particular counterpart. And we talk a lot about the psychology of anchoring and how to use anchoring without alienating the other side. You don't want to use the old-fashioned lowball technique of, starting with a price that's very different from a fair price. But there are ways to accomplish the same thing of shifting the other side's sense of the plausible outcome without it coming across as an ultimatum. So that's the sort of take on the old-fashioned, competitive win-lose negotiation model. And then we shift to thinking about what it means to look for a win-win outcome, what it means to expand the pie in negotiation. This is usually what you can do if there are multiple issues, or if it's a long-run relationship, if it's a repeated game structure. We talk about how to look for types of issues that enable ways of creating value. We talk about how to expand the agenda. So something that may look at first like a single issue negotiation often can be expanded through dividing an issue into parts or bringing new issues onto the agenda. And then once it becomes a multiple issue agenda, then there's more possibility for win-win outcomes. Our third module builds on this with some more complex techniques and things that involve preparation. We start using spreadsheets to model the payoff matrix from a multiple issue negotiation. We learn a little bit of decision analysis, decision theory. Um, we learn a technique that is a very useful technique called the meso or multiple equivalent self-favorable offer technique. It's something that's very easy to do when you have a spreadsheet, and it enables you to create value even with a low trust situation, even with a counterpart who's not very forthcoming. We talk about a number of tricks like contingency clauses, which are useful for a number of things. Locking in a fallback agreement can be extremely useful. Delegating roles when you have multiple people at the table can be very useful. All of these things help you navigate complexity when you have 12 issues on the agenda and it's easy to go wrong. So that's the first three. And then module four, we turn and focus on the process-oriented side of things. And we start to look at more complex situations that involve a dispute or a conflict rather than simply a deal. And here, there are a lot of things to become aware of in terms of how you create a sense of participation for the other side, giving them voice, giving them choice, showing them that you agree with their factual understanding of the past, even if you don't understand with all of the interpretation of the past that they have reached. There are a number of good tactics here that sort of override some of the unhealthy things that we do in a conflict. You know, we become very reactive. We become very who's right and who's wrong oriented, and that makes it hard to find win-win outcomes. And we, develop very stepwise frameworks for de-escalating tension, aligning on shared goals, and building sustainable outcomes. In module 5, we look more closely at the role of third parties. When a dispute has gotten to the point of heading to the legal system, then you have a third party in between the two parties, which might be a judge, it might be an arbitrator. Increasingly, businesses like to use techniques like mediation that put a third party in a more limited role and facilitate a negotiated solution. We look closely at a case that comes from a real incidents of an international joint venture that went sideways, where a mediator was able to bring the two sides to a negotiated settlement that was much more efficient than the legal system could have offered them. We talk about how managers can play the role of a mediator to fix conflicts within their organization. And managers who are good at that, who know how to use the techniques of mediation, are very valued, especially in flat organizations where not everybody has authority over everyone else. And so you really need to act as a mediator rather than as an arbitrator when helping people come to better working agreements so that they can move forward effectively. In module 6, we move to the most complex situation where you have multiple parties, not just 2 or 3, but you have 5 or 6 parties around a table. Often these parties are of different types. One might be a business developer, a real estate developer. One might be a political party. One might be a union. One might be an activist. And so they bring different negotiation techniques, and there are different ways to orchestrate consensus or to build blocking coalitions if you are a person whose interests don't align with going forward. You can play the role of a spoiler and use techniques that are used all the time in Congress and Parliament, to block deals. There's a lot of group psychology that comes in when you have lots of people around a table. So that becomes a kind of capstone exercise that brings together a lot of the elements from the course. And then some of the cases that we look at, the cases we start with are cases of, buyer seller competitive negotiation about a piece of real estate or a factory or a consumer purchase, a major purchase of some kind. We then look at a case which is called Petroco. That's quite interesting because it's a family business being approached by a large corporation that's doing a roll up. So the corporation needs to acquire small businesses as part of this strategy, and the family business wants to sell, but they want to sell in a way that enables their particular vision of what they want to do next in life. So it's a meeting of odd bedfellows, and there's a lot of great lessons about perspective taking that we draw out of this case. Global consulting is a pretty standard case that we've tuned to reflect the employment negotiations that a lot of our students, both in executive programs and MBA programs, find themselves in. So it's a consulting company handling the final negotiations about an employment package with a new employee, and there are 6 issues that need to be resolved. Salary, health insurance, which city they're going to be based in, which industry they're going to be assigned to, and 2 or 3 others. And it's complicated, but with the tools that we give you, you can see that it's remarkably manageable and easy to find the win-win deal, the deal that is best for both the company in terms of what's easy for them to offer, and best for the recruit in terms of what's most important for that recruit, at that particular point in time. The Park Bar case is a very complex and fun case. It models a restaurant startup in New York City that has a very exciting new business that gets approached by a franchisor from the Middle East that puts restaurants in high-end malls and airports, across the Middle East. And so it's not at all expected. The New York restaurant feels like they're in way over their head. They're not really sure that they can, they haven't made it to New Jersey yet, and now suddenly they're going to be in 7 countries in the Middle East. And so it's unclear whether the deal makes sense, but and there's a lot of that. In this deal, the numbers look a lot like the numbers would in the real world. So we put you in pairs so that you can work on the numbers together. And it gives a lot of students the feeling of they can't believe how far they've come in 3 weeks because it's quite complex what you're doing here. And most of the students manage to figure it out. The summer interns exercise captures a kind of conflict that happens, I think, at every organization I've worked in, where there's some program for summer interns, and the HR department has its vision about what the purpose of the program is. They think it improves the image of the corporation in the eyes of universities, and it's a way to bring diversity into the organization and all sorts of HR goals. But the engineering department thinks of these interns as, helpful grunt workers, people to do minute tasks that need to be done to meet deadlines. And so the goals of the engineering department conflict with the goals of the HR department, and an old veteran engineering manager, a division head, comes into conflict with the young recently hired HR developer. And so this captures organizational politics in its essence, the kind of predictable conflicts that break out between the different functional groups within a corporation, and can be really an annoyance and can get in the way of things. But using these process-oriented techniques, there are ways to help people save face, help people take back what they said, find a win-win outcome, find a common narrative that both sides can live with, and then work together as partners. The Green Gauge case is a case where it's set in Silicon Valley. It's very much a case, drawing on my knowledge of Silicon Valley from starting my career there. It's a green energy company where a project starts to have problems because the software developers are innovating beyond what what was in the original contract, and the liaison to the customer is very worried that the customer won't want the new product that is being developed. And so a plan needs to be made between the manager, the head of the software, and the head of the contracts. And this models managing as a mediator in a flat organization. The Harbor Co. case is a case of a public stakeholder consensus negotiation. A big developer is wanting to build a deep water port on the east coast of the United States. And so it requires a federal license, and it requires buy-in from the state, and the unions have to be okay with it. The environmental groups have to be okay with it. So it's a multi-party stakeholder public negotiation in a very structured political way that allows for different kinds of tactics. And what students find as they move from these simple cases, buying a car, very simple case, to negotiating about something that's going to change the coastline of the East Coast, is that some of the old friend tactics that they learned in the first weeks remain useful even when you get to these very complex situations, but some of them are no longer useful. A technique that's useful in the simplest situations is walking away from the table to show the other side that you don't need the deal. Usually you want to leave a pen at the table so you have an excuse to come back in case they don't call you back. But walking away is a very powerful way of communicating that you don't need this deal. But it's a huge mistake to use that technique in a public group negotiation, in a multi-party negotiation, because if you walk away from the table, the coalition that you'll form is the coalition of people who are still in the room. You've just made the problem easier for them to solve because they don't have to take your constraints into account anymore. So we will learn that some of the old techniques should not be used as you move into these more complex situations, but some new techniques become available, like using group identity or using conformity pressure, which becomes a big factor when you have 6 parties around a table. So that's the progression and the way that we use cases to draw out the points vividly.
All right. Well, great stuff. I think very comprehensive, cutting edge, obviously building on the years of research, but also the latest, greatest cases and technologies and situations and techniques. So great stuff. We do have a first question before we go further. Are there any exams for this course?
No, no exams. We don't think you learn negotiation through taking exams. So hopefully you're not a person who likes exams and you were asking with the hope that the answer would be no.
Right. And well, any pre-reads for this course as well? Anna is asking.
Yeah,
Anything you
I
suggest?
mean, it's always helpful to read some of these old classics, like the book Getting to Yes. It's a little bit one-sided. Um, we don't like the title of the book because we don't think that the goal of negotiation is to get to yes. The goal of a negotiation is to decide rationally whether a deal with this counterpart makes sense or whether your time would be better spent with another counterpart. And if you've prepared in the way that we suggest, it's very easy to make that decision to say, thank you for your time, but I can see just from these 15 minutes that we're not going to be the best partners for each other. Maybe in the future we will be. So let's shake hands with no hard feelings and move on. The book Getting to Yes can create deal fever because people think they need to get to yes. But nevertheless, it is a good book for teaching the collaborative, cooperative, value creating techniques. And it's very good at suggesting phrases, showing how a dialogue of a negotiation that didn't work, and then what people could have said that would have created a more cooperative tone. So while the book overstates the case, it is quite useful, and it's a really quick, easy read. So I always think it's useful for people to read that.
Absolutely. I think I have it somewhere in the library. So if I can find it in 2 seconds, I'll show you. But let's move on. If you still have questions, please put them in the Q&A. That's why we are here. That's why Michael is here. Also, there is a team behind the scenes to help you as well with any administrative questions and things like this. So there will be work to do. right? In this course, it's hands-on. You need to participate in negotiation sessions and things like this. But at the end of the day, once you fulfill the requirements, you'll get the digital certificate like this. So it's not just a PDF. This is something with embedded security in it because when you apply for a new role, maybe people want to do background checks on you. So that's going to be included in here. Also, many participants, they share this on LinkedIn, right? And this, of course, has a great reception. Same thing, you can share it with on your resume, whether it's within the same company or whether you would like to move somewhere else. So while we wait for more questions from you, these are the two steps to take from here, or two options, right? So one of them is if you still have questions regarding the program, you want to know whether this is the right fit for you or not, then you can scan this first QR code and you can schedule a call with an advisor to learn more. So in that case, you will have a one-on-one session and you can ask any questions you want related to your particular situation. If everything is clear and you think this is helpful for your career, for your development, then you can scan that second QR code below, which is next to the headline called Apply Now. So if everything is clear, you just scan the QR code, Apply Now. This will lead you to registration process, which is as simple as it gets. You'll get more details about the program as well. So two options here. So once again, a follow-up call 101, or you just go ahead and register for the next run. Otherwise, you can still please put questions in the Q&A, such as what are the prerequisites for the certification, or in other words, what are the completion requirements? So there's no exam, but what do you need to do, Michael, to actually complete and get the certificate?
Well, we have a number of videos and activities each of the 6 weeks, but there's only one deliverable that's actually absolutely required each week. So, we think that students spend between 3 and 6 hours, and some students have a little more time on their hands and they're curious about some of the tangents, and others, want to get through this in a more minimal way. So you should expect that there will be one deliverable each week, and often it's just reflecting on a negotiation that you've done against a bot. And then your reflection goes to a bulletin board where you can then see the other students' reflections, and people comment on each other's reflections, and you become partners on a learning journey, but it's all on your own schedule, on your own time. You could do these things, on the train, when you're coming back from work, whatever works for you. There are, I believe, maybe two live sessions that we ask everybody to attend, and we tend to schedule them. I think they were scheduled at 9 or 10 Eastern Standard Time. So we tried to find a time that worked for all the students who were enrolled in each run of the class. So there's just a couple of those, and those are valuable because you learn different things by doing the negotiation against a classmate live in a Zoom breakout room, and then coming back into a group discussion where everybody's reflecting on what just happened, when it's still hot, and hearing the way people think, hearing what your counterpart has to say about their experience negotiating against you. So those we don't use them for everything like we did traditionally. This is the first time we've taught a course where we don't have to have those sessions every week, but we still have 2 or 3 of them, and we try to make it as flexible as possible to accommodate people's schedules. And that's it. One thing that you have to hand in that might take 15 to 20 minutes to type up, that allows for group interaction, and then a couple of live sessions where you get to have the group experience.
All right, well, great stuff. And coming back to this page, you talked about case studies or case-based simulations from various industries, right? And Anna is
Yes.
asking in the chat whether we will have industry speakers in the course.
We do in a way, almost every session, we have a guest speaker video. And we have it by video because we wanted to minimize the number of times that are required for everyone to be live because we know it's a lot of time zones and busy people. But what we have are these 5 to 10 minute videos from often the CEOs of the companies that we've just read a case about. And these come from interviews that I conducted personally where these are not videos that would be allowed to be on YouTube because they're videos where they're talking about details of the negotiation process that normally you would never hear, and it really lifts the curtain and shows you what happened behind the scenes and how it happens in situ. So I think I mentioned one of them is the former CEO of Eli Lilly. He talks about how he managed to acquire the small company that produced Cialis, the erectile dysfunction drug that turned out to be one of the most profitable drugs in the history of biotech. And it was because he had handled the process in some previous negotiations with the utmost fairness that then the person who had developed Cialis wanted to work with him as opposed to working with Pfizer or one of the other giants. We have an interview with Ratan Tata, who is a legend of a business in India, and who he talks about how Tata acquired Jaguar Land Rover from Ford, and it was a remarkable event at the time because people associated Tata with the Nano, with a car that cost less than $1,000, and how could it be that Tata Motors would be acquiring Jaguar Land Rover, the crown jewel of the British auto industry. But there were very particular reasons why Tata was the best partner and beat out many other bidders from around the world. And Ratan, shares some of the inside details that you'll find nowhere in the public record. So that's how we do it. We have these sort of inside view videos that you can watch at your leisure.
All right, well, great stuff. So we also talked about who is this program for. We said middle level management, senior management, but we have a question from Anonymous who says, I'm an MBA graduate. Is this a good course for me? So maybe a little bit of an experience, but not decades.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're an MBA graduate, so you may be telling me that you have a little less work experience than some, but you also have a recent business education, right? So I would say don't worry that this course would be redundant with your MBA, even if you took a negotiation class, because some of the things in this class are not offered in any other negotiation class. So we talk a lot about how AI is changing negotiation. All of us will be negotiating against bots in our professional life. Over the last few years, Walmart is saving billions of dollars a year by automating all of their negotiations with their suppliers. They have 5,000 suppliers around the world. Those negotiations now are being converted to being handled by a bot. And the bot that they use, I know a lot about this bot, it uses some of the same techniques that we learn in this class, the meso technique, for example. So you'll get a very cutting edge look at the world of negotiation in ways that probably your MBA program didn't offer completely. And then in terms of, is it too soon to take the class? Well, I don't think so. And I think it's, really valuable if you're, a young Gen Z professional to be negotiating with some millennials, maybe even some Gen X professionals. It's great to have generational variety and industry variety. We all learn more when we face different kinds of counterparts.
Wonderful. So coming back to the QR code in front of you, so in case you're watching this from the recording, you can still scan the QR code with your phone. But if you are with us live, my colleague also put it in the chat. So the link is there. You have two options, schedule a call with an advisor, or you just go ahead and register for the next run. So you have it in the chat if you're with us. Otherwise, you have it on the screen in front of you. So you can scan the QR code there. Or if you wish, you could also type up the link, which you see there as well. Either way works, all right? So thank you for resharing the link in the chat again. And yeah, so I think this is very interesting, negotiating with bots, right? Also, a lot of junior jobs are now basically interviewed first round. People interview with robots or with bots, right? Whether that's
Yes.
for internships or even associate jobs, I don't know, but first round for sure goes through a bot.
Yeah, we have to be comfortable with bots. They are, I think, the CEO of NVIDIA, recently said that we need an HR an HR department for AI agents because the AI agents used to handle the simplest tasks, but now they are our coworkers in some tasks, and they may become our managers at times, or they may become partners or counterparts. And we need to be comfortable understanding how bots negotiate and how we can most effectively negotiate against bots. So the the use of bargaining bots in this class is not just a convenience for scheduling. It is that, but it's also valuable for gaining an understanding of how these bots work and gaining an understanding of how you can negotiate effectively against them or with them, making use of them as partners.
Right. So in module 3, you mentioned the meso technique, right? This is
Yes.
what's being used by Walmart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a technique where it stands for multiple equivalent self-favorable offers. So imagine that I'm Walmart and the supplier contract typically has 12 issues in it. It has, the quantity of the product. It has maybe there's multiple products. There's the schedule. There's the payment timing. It's maybe some insurance, whatever. And the preferences of any given supplier about those things will be idiosyncratic. It'll depend on supply chain things. And the needs of Walmart are constantly changing, right? And the old way of doing this was you would have some middle manager in Arkansas, at Walmart headquarters, calling someone in China, trying to find an hour to call and trying to, get beyond, not really sharing fluency in a language. And it would be a series of calls, lots of mutual frustration. Now it's a bot that starts with like a spreadsheet of here are all the issues and here are Walmart's preferences, and then it generates multiple uh, menus, multiple packages. So it'll say, "Hello, supplier, supplier A. You provide toilet paper to Walmart. Here are three possible packages that might work for you. Please tell us which of these packages is best for you and which is worst for you." And it might be package one would be this quantity at this price per unit, at this timing, and then package B would have maybe a quicker timing but a higher price or something like that. And just through the supplier answering a series of questions about which works best for them, Walmart can zoom into the sweet spot of what deal is most beneficial for Walmart and most beneficial for this supplier. And so the rate of settlement has gone up from like 25% to 60%. And the supplier satisfaction has gone up because they have this very polite bot that is available 24/7, that is infinitely patient, that can re-explain the deal as many times as you would like. that is willing to consider as many alterations in the deal, and that is never rushing, never pressuring. And so there are certain things, very well structured negotiation situations where companies have found that they need negotiation experts like the graduates of our program to design these agent programs, but letting the agents handle at least the preliminaries often works better than having a human do the whole thing.
Well, great stuff, great stuff. So, yes, that's great that they are coded to be polite. I think if they were trained on the transcripts of some of my other bosses, or some of my bosses' negotiations, it would have been different. But, you
Yeah,
know, sometimes people say whatever brings the results, right? But you also did say that you don't want the other party to feel, I don't know, pushed to the ground, right?
right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, because companies used to, one of the first innovations in this area, in like procurement contracts, in the early aughties was procurement auctions. Instead of negotiating with every single possible supplier, Walmart would say, okay, we're holding an online auction. It's on this day, and all the companies in the world, have to put in their bid, and then we pick the one that's best for us. And what they would often get is that the winner of the auction would be a company that, gave that offered a very low price, but is going to then offer very low quality and not perform, not deliver on time, etc. So you get the winner's curse, these when you have these auctions, because it's a more manipulative technique. Um, and you don't want that with a supplier. You want a supplier that feels like they have a good deal and they're motivated to keep the relationship. And you certainly don't want a bitter supplier who feels like they've been squeezed to the limit.
Sure. And I think this applies to also complex negotiations like M&A, because you might think about this, that this is a multiple round game, right? So you may want to do a deal with these people again.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
that's one of the lessons from this case with Sidney Torrell of Lilly, that he was handling a very small deal with a company in the biotech space, and he was very generous towards them and very fair because he knows how vulnerable these small biotech companies are when they negotiate with the big companies, and the small company actually refused the generous deal he had offered. But then years later, when the developer of Cialis was trying to learn about the big players in the industry, they happened to talk to the company that Lilly had not done a deal with, but that Lilly had treated so well, and they were completely convinced by that. So even if you don't have a transaction with the same party again, you may have a transaction with somebody that they talked to, and that's why it's just good to make habitual these little techniques when running a meeting or running a negotiation that give the other side voice and choice, that give them the feeling of control and commitment. And it increases their perceived fairness, it increases their sense of commitment, and lots of good things follow from that. So it's just good to make these things habitual. And that's what we do through repeated practice in the class.
great stuff. So I think this was also a great final message, perhaps. So it's all about your reputation as well. It's about being efficient, but also your reputation in the marketplace. You learn a lot in this course. Once again, you can schedule a call with an advisor if you have follow-up questions. Otherwise, you can just go ahead and apply now. We thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Michael, for your insights so much. You kind of had a mini masterclass here already, but I think
Yeah.
there's
Well,
much more to come.
it's a
Much more to
mistake
come.
to ask professors to talk for 30 seconds on a topic because we're used to lecturing. But I just wanted to say one final point, which is when you take this class and you get the certificate, you become part of the Columbia network. And it's the easiest way to become part of the network as opposed to doing a 2-year, MBA or coming for a 2-week-long program in person. And so it's a great way to dip your toe in the water and become part of this large network that may pay off for you in all kinds of ways.
Exactly. So great stuff. Thank you so much. And good luck to all of you. And hopefully we'll see you in the course. And thank you once again, Michael, and everyone for great questions. Thank you.
Look forward to seeing some of you in the class.